What options are on the table for the Biden administration to respond to this?
Well, they do have a fair number of options, but what they've told us is obviously the death of 3 U.S. troops is going to significantly change their calculus and merit a much stronger response. So you had seen missile strikes, things like that over the last several weeks, as there had been the U.S. and then Iranian proxies trading fire in Syria and Iraq and places like that. What we're hearing is that it's very unlikely that there would actually be an attack on Iran. I mean, despite what some Republicans in Congress are calling for, I mean, the risks of a broad regional conflagration as well as direct conflict between the U.S. and Iran is much more severe then. But what we've heard is essentially that they would consider much heavier attacks against these Iranian proxies in the region, in Syria and Iraq, places like that, but also potentially Iranian officials, soldiers, uniformed officers in those countries. So whereas they had shied away before from targeting Iranian assets in those countries and only going after proxies, they would essentially expand the rules of engagement. So we anticipate that in the coming days.
And of course, that's all on the offense. On the defense side, though, this was a drone that was able to attack a U.S. base. We have had reporting today that essentially there was a U.S. drone in play also at the same time that was attempting to land. Maybe there was some confusion, but should we expect that there's any bulking up of U.S. defenses in the region as well?
Well, the challenge there is the time it would take to get more air defenses. I mean, this is no small thing getting those assets to the region. But yeah, I mean, what we've essentially heard, over the time that these attacks have happened, the U.S. has had a very good track record in shooting down these one-way attack drones. But what appeared to happen in this case was there was a U.S. drone returning to the base. The air defenses got confused whether that was the attack drone, so they didn't sort of fire up, and that's how we got to this. But certainly there are going to be a lot more questions about how they avoid this in the future, precisely because of the sort of imbroglio and the situation you're seeing President Biden in as he weighs this pressure at home against the need to respond and how he's going to act the next few days.
All right, Nick Wadhams joining me from Bloomberg. Thank you so much. Now, we've also heard from the press secretary of the U.S. Defense Department, Major General Patrick Ryder. He joined Bloomberg Surveillance this morning talking about the U.S. response. Just take a listen to what he had to say on this matter.
We know that Iran is behind these groups. We're not seeking conflict with Iran. We don't seek war with Iran. But again, we will take necessary measures to protect our forces, and we will respond in a time and manner of our choosing.
Let's turn now to Bloomberg's Josh Wingrove, who covers the White House for us. So, Josh, we were just hearing from Nick about the kind of military factors the administration is considering here, why it may not be likely to actually strike Iran on its home turf. But how does politics factor in as well, especially considering this is an election year for the president? He wants a second term.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one. They really bent over backwards to stay in the briefing room, and I think understandably to say, like, that is not the lens that they have on this. They are going to say that whatever the president's going to do is going to be because they think it's the right thing to do and not with an eye to a particular swing state or that. What we know so far is he's had a couple of meetings with his advisors, and they're saying, basically, stay tuned. We're going to hit what we decide to hit, what Biden decides to hit, and we'll let you know when that is. There's no clarity on whether that is in the coming hours, days, weeks. It's unclear. But, more broadly right now, the risk for Biden is that this is sort of another sign that the overall situation in the Middle East could continue to degrade. That is weighing on him right now, in particular in states like Michigan with a large Muslim American population that is upset about ongoing American support for Israel. More broadly, if he gets kind of dragged in to conflicts, both Biden and Trump have campaigned on sort of ending, quote-unquote, forever wars, as Trump would call them. So I think it would open the potential for that. Republicans will already are sort of, hinting or at least staking out ground to call Biden's response too timid in their eyes. That you might even say that's why many of them are calling for a strike on Iran directly. They know maybe that Biden is unlikely or he can't do that. So the politics are swirling around this. It's a tricky situation, and just generally speaking, this is a time when voters are not keen to get involved in long-term American engagements. And of course, they want to see response, justice, I guess you could say, for when American soldiers are killed or injured. Of course, significant number injured here. It's a big number. I think the 3 dead is itself very harrowing, but I think some people have lost track about
dozens.
About 30 or so that are injured, some pretty seriously. So this is a big situation. The White House rhetoric pretty strong today on it and saying this changes the calculus for them.
Well, and of course, it all comes against the backdrop of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. You mentioned how Biden may be running into issues with this in states like Michigan because of what's happening in Gaza. We also know in Paris over the weekend, there was negotiators from Egypt, Qatar, the U.S. and Israel trying to work toward a ceasefire agreement in exchange for the release of hostages. Just how hard is the president pushing to stop the hostilities in Gaza right now?
There have been signals that they're cranking up the pressure, both publicly with statements from Biden himself and his allies that they're concerned about the casualty toll in Gaza, and privately they're sort of sending signals that they're getting a little more optimistic that this deal might come together, including today. They said that it's, nothing is baked yet, but that it seems like things are moving in the right direction. Reports, of course, the CIA director among the sort of contingent of staff that Biden is sending. So I think they would like a ceasefire. I think that they would like a ceasefire. They've opened the door to having a longer one. They're not ruling out, potentially one. When I say they want to pause in hostilities, I guess. They don't want a full ceasefire, So they want to pause. They're open to a longer pause. But if we're talking about a full ceasefire, a full end to the conflict, which is what progressive groups are asking for, which is what Muslim American groups are asking for. Right now, the White House is ruling that out. They think that would just be a victory for Hamas, which, of course, they say broke the ceasefire that had existed on October 6th. So right now, they want a pause. They're willing to talk about a pause as part of a hostage negotiation. They're open to a long one. They've not ruled out. They've been asked about, months long. They've not ruled that out, but the full ceasefire, I think, is a bridge too far still for them.
All right, Bloomberg's Josh Wingrove, thank you
so
much. We want to turn now to domestic policy as well. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today telling reporters that negotiations over a border deal are still ongoing.
We have been working in good faith and across the aisle to make real progress on one of the most important issues we are facing, securing our border. Now we need Speaker Johnson to step up and provide the authorities and resources we requested to secure the border.
Let's turn now to Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson. Wendy, just earlier this afternoon, we get a tweet from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who says any border shutdown authority that allows even one illegal crossing is a non-starter. He's previously suggested that this deal is dead on arrival. Is this even going anywhere in the House of Representatives?
Not anywhere soon, and certainly not anywhere soon enough for border swing states, for border states, and, for everyone who is dealing with this situation. 2024 politics have gotten smack in the middle of this, in a way that, for example, they aren't, unlike, with the Iran situation that Josh described. The border deal right now is dead on arrival in the House, partly because of some actual policy differences. As you said, Mike Johnson wants 0 people coming across the border every day. Democrats are willing for 5,000 people to come across the border every day as a limit. So there's a lot of negotiating room there. And then on top of that, the Republican frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, is saying we don't need a bill at all, just elect me and I'll fix it, which, is a hard thing for some Republicans, including the ones who have been negotiating this deal, to take. For example, Senator Langford of Oklahoma, who's been working on this for weeks with Senate Democrats, is frustrated that the House Republicans are more interested in denying Biden a win than in getting this done. I mean, he's put a lot of hours into this. So that isn't going anywhere, and not much else is this week.
Well, what about a tax deal, Wendy? Because we haven't even seen the text of the border deal yet, but we do know what that bill looks like, and it could theoretically go to the floor this week or next, right?
It could. It could. If that moves along, we could actually see some movement on that bill. However, again, Freedom Caucus members, who are the most sort of Trump diehard conservatives on the House side, House Republican side, who are in the majority, they also don't want to give Democrats another election year win by expanding the child tax credit, even though it would also give them a win in lowering some business taxes. So, it's almost like they should all go home until November because they seem to keep tripping over the election here in trying to get anything passed. But we may see that this week. You're right.